good book makes you want to turn the page to the next chapter, and that's what we have here. A good book, the VP Racing SportsCar Challenge. Its inaugural season, round one, race one was yesterday, race two today. You want to turn that chapter and experience the competition, the hard-nosed racing that we saw here yesterday at Daytona International Speedway, the World Center of Racing. What a great racetrack to debut this series and debut some of the new drivers to IMSA competition. This racetrack, good passing zones for these drivers. Turn 1, the International Horseshoe, the West Horseshoe, turn 6 as you head back onto the Super Speedway. And don't forget, heavy braking for the Le Mans chicane. Out of there onto the Speedway, Speedway 3, 4, brings you back to the checkered flag and hopefully a win here at Daytona International Speedway. Round one yesterday was a great one, and names going down in the record book as first-time winners for this series. At the start, the excitement happened very early on. Bijoy Garg jumps to the lead as they head into turn 1, locks the left rear, and around he goes. Dan Goldberg, a great job going wide to miss him, and then some excitement a little further back. Tim Probert aboard that copper-colored and white Mercedes, a big jump at the start, but that's a no-no. You've got to stay in your column formation until after the start-finish line. He does not. Probert will have a drive-through penalty. And then on the racetrack, Todd Coleman in that green Aston Martin, Sebastian Carrazzo in the blue and orange Porsche get together on the way into the kink. No penalties there, but a problem for Carrazzo. He'll get back underway. Vin Barletta aboard the Turner Motorsports BMW had a great run going until he gets just a little over-exuberant into turn 1. No contact, he'll be back underway. And really a smooth sailing day all day long for Billy Griffin aboard the number 14 race 4RP Mustang from Core Autosports. He takes the victory in GSX. And for Dan Goldberg, he sees the checkered flag first. A brand new team for Goldberg, brand new chassis. Had never driven the Duquesne before, but he drives it to victory. His name goes in the record books. Race number 1 for the VP Racing SportsCar Challenge in the books. Welcome in, everyone. I'm Brian Till, along with Jeremy Shaw. And Jeremy, we saw a great race yesterday, and I think the formula that IMSA came up with is a good one.
I like this multi-class racing. There's a lot of drivers in this field who'd never raced in IMSA before. A lot of them making their first ever professional start yesterday. So they've learned a little bit. A lot of them, I think, several drivers had pretty severe nerves going into the first race yesterday. They'll have allayed some of those fears. I think having got the first race under their belt, they're going to be a little bit more relaxed, but super excited for another race today.
A new series for IMSA, but the cars very familiar. LMP3 based machinery and GT4 based machinery, just like you would see in the GS category in Michelin Pilot Challenge, but a different format. 45-minute sprint race, only one driver, no pit stops. You hope no pit stops anyway. You don't want to have to come to pit lane. And that makes for a sprint format, and it gives these bronze and silver rated drivers more time in the car. It gives them the focus of setting up the car. It turns them into better, more complete race car drivers that will then hopefully move on throughout the IMSA series.
That's exactly right. For the GSX guys, the next step for them is the Michelin Pilot Challenge Series, which is 2 driver races, longer races, 2-hour races in that case, or even 4 hours at Daytona next week to start their season. For the P3 cars, well, for those drivers, their next step would be the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. The 24 hours, the Rolex 24 starts that off that season next weekend.
6 weekends, 2 races per weekend for VP Racing SportsCar Challenge. Take a look at the starting grid. Dan Goldberg started from pole yesterday. It's a familiar spot, and he had a great run yesterday. He was very smart with turn 1 when Bijoy Garg kind of attacked him in turn 1. He sat back, let it transpire, dodged the problem in front of him, and won the race.
Yeah, it was Bijoy Garg, the youngster, who started on pole position yesterday with that last lap in qualifying, a last lap flyer. But yeah, he made a mistake on the first corner. But the grid for today's race is set by either the second fastest lap for each driver in qualifying or their best lap during yesterday's race. For almost all of these contenders, all but 4 or 5 in the kind of mid-pack, it was their qualifying times that set the grid for today's race. And Dan Goldberg's second best lap yesterday in qualifying, good enough for the pole today, so that's another feather in his cap. But there's very little to choose between the cars and the lap times of Dan Goldberg and Bijoy Garg.
Starting in 3rd position in the Prototype Challenge, category, the LMP3 category, I should say, the 99. Gainsco on that car, and if you're a fan of sports car racing, you'll remember the Gainsco entry. Courtney Crone driving it here in VP Racing Sports Car Challenge. Billy Griffin starts from the pole again in the GSX category. All kinds of good stories there. Different manufacturers involved. Some drivers with experience, other drivers new to IMSA competition. Here we go from Daytona. Man, they are side by side, almost touching as they wait for the green flag. It flies, and Goldberg with a good jump. Dan Goldberg in that light-colored car to your right leads down into turn one. Garg on the outside. Good move by Courtney Crone in the Red Dragon. The 99 slides up inside Garg and takes the position.
She does. Nice move there by Courtney, certainly. But for Brian Wilsey, who's right behind her in car number 30 for Sean Griggs Motorsports, he moved across to the inside line before the start. They crossed the start-finish line. As we saw yesterday, that's a no-no. The stewards are going to be looking at that. I hope there's not a penalty early in this race for that car number 30, but the GSX cars, that looked to be pretty clean at the start.
Now, interesting day today, Jeremy. I think the racetrack is going to be quite different. The temperature's probably 10 degrees warmer. A lot of sun beating down on the racetrack. Really not a lot of cloud cover here. So the track is going to have temperature, and the wind is very different as well. On the nose of the cars into turn one, on the tail into the bus stop. Let's take a look. Lance Wilsey on the outside. Yeah, he's dropped down into the third position left side column. He should have been up on the high side until across the line.
He should. And so that's certainly something the officials are going to be looking at. But in the meantime, out in front of this race is Dan Goldberg. And this time around, Bijoy Garg, he started on the outside of the road this time. He learned from yesterday, didn't carry too much speed into the first corner, didn't spin, but he did lose a position.
I believe that might be the 54 car in turn 6. And I think there is contact with the tire wall. You see it askew there. This could bring out a full course caution. Yeah,
that's the MLT Motorsports entry, I think, of Adrian Kunzel there, originally from the UK, lives now in New York City in car number 54. Hopefully he can get that car going again. No. Full course caution has been called.
Now time to take a breath. You know, the full course caution is out. Positions cannot change. Just maintain your position. Let's slow down. Look at the flags waving there in the starter stand. You can see how much wind on that yellow flag that the starter is holding up.
Wow.
10 knots out of the south, gusting to 21 right now. And that's going to change the way the cars handle, Jeremy. I was saying on the nose of the cars into turn one, that's going to pin the nose under braking, maybe make the car a little bit loose at turn in, and more importantly, into the Le Mans chicane, as some people still call the bus stop. You're going to have a tailwind, and so when you go to the brakes, that wind is going to continue to push you into the brake zone, and your brake zone may get a little bit longer because of that tailwind, and also because you're going to have a couple more miles an hour when you get there.
You are, and as you say, very different to yesterday, and the air is sort of much crisper today, with much less cloud cover. The sun is pretty sunny out there. There's a lot of cloud around as well, but it's a lot warmer than yesterday, and that wind direction is going to be really tricky. In terms of gearing of the cars, well, the P3 cars, the LMP3 prototype cars, they have a set gear stack. It's just going to mean that they're not going to need to change the gear ratios to get the better performance out of the cars, because they are fixed, but it will mean that they will carry a little bit less speed through the tri-oval and down towards turn one, but a bit more speed down the back straightaway and into the Le Mans chicane. For the GSX cars, those cars have been moved around a fair bit more by that wind. It'll be, as you say, tightly on the nose going into turn one. That'll make things pretty tricky there in that braking area.
So Adrian Kunzel with the problem there in turn 6. A lot of GT4 experience, but these prototypes are very different. And in fact, a champion in GT Celebration in the GT4 car makes that contact with the tire wall, and the safety crew, the AMR safety crew there to pull that car out, make sure the driver is okay. But these safety workers are athletic, and what I mean by that is take a look at the safety worker down at the right front of the car. The mirror flops up, good catch.
Seriously
look at
impressed. That was pretty sharp.
They are athletes, I'm telling you. They're there to help you, but that was a great catch.
He's a cricketer. He's a slip fielder. That was
a great catch.
Very good. So good news. He's got that car on the way again. It looks like there might be some damage, however, to the right front. So I'm not sure whether Adrian's going to be able to continue, but he is going to have to make a pit stop. He's already gone a lap down to the field. In GSX, by the way, Sebastian Carrazzo, who started in the 3rd position in that Kelly Moss with Riley Porsche 718 GT4 RS CS, mouthful that is, car number 27 though, has taken the lead in GSX from 3rd on the grid, so a really good opening lap for Sebastian Carrazzo, who's from Puerto Rico. Into 2nd position goes Moise Uretsky in the Aston Martin Vantage, and down from the pole position to 3rd place on that opening lap, car number 14, that's Billy Griffin, yesterday's winner in the Core Motorsports Ford Mustang GT4. There's a BMW in 4th position, so 4 different manufacturers in the top 4 positions in GSX.
Again, hats off to the IMSA technical staff, and I know the teams will disagree with me when I say this, but the balance of performance seems pretty good. You talk about the different manufacturers up there able to race each other in very different types of cars. Billy Griffin slipped to 3rd at the start, which is exactly what he did yesterday. He said, I was just being smart. There's no reason to get involved with anything at the start. 45-minute race, I've got time. Very heady drive yesterday. We'll see what he can do with it today.
Yeah, and he had the pole position for both races. He's only a 1/10 of a second or so quicker than Moise Uretsky yesterday. In yesterday's race, Sebastian Carrazzo was fast, but he had an incident in the early stages. We saw a glimpse of that earlier on when he got together with Todd Coleman heading towards the kink very early in the race, and that put him way behind. He set some very fast lap times, but was way out of contention at that stage.
So take a look at the GSX start. You see Griffin alongside a prototype because they stacked the field together, so he has to stay in line. He was on the high side. You don't necessarily want to be there. That's what Uretsky took advantage of. Slides down to the inside, and Carrazzo around the outside of both Griffin and Uretsky. What a move by Carrazzo.
Yeah, great effort there by Sebastian. He was disappointed after yesterday's race with that incident he had, and it meant him he was a long way back in the field. He showed that car's pace. He's he's been racing for about 5 years now. He started relatively late. He started in the GT3 Cup Porsche Series, one make series with IMSA back in 2018. His first weekend he was pretty quick, but he had a big crash and actually missed one of the races because the car was being repaired. But he's come back from that and he won the Gold Cup Championship the following season, moved up into the Porsche Carrera Cup North America last season, also raced in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo Series with IMSA, had some success there as well. So a very talented young driver from Puerto Rico, and Sebastian Carrazzo leads this race for that hugely experienced Kelly Moss with Riley Motorsports conglomerate effectively nowadays.
And I was talking to Bill Riley about this pairing with Kelly Moss, who has so much experience throughout motorsports, but especially in the Porsche one-make categories, and he just said it works well because with the LMP3 cars that they're running, GT4 cars, GTD cars in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, they're able to kind of take each team's strengths and put them together, and there are Kelly Moss technicians, mechanics, engineers spread throughout the different programs, just as there are Riley mechanics and engineers spread throughout the different programs, and it has really created a powerhouse that you're going to have to deal with regardless of the series that you run in the IMSA paddock.
Yeah, I mean, they've had so much success. Bill Riley's organization, well, started, of course, by his father, Bob, who's a legend in this sport and still designing race cars. He's designing a new Trans Am car at the moment, is Bob, which is wonderful. I think he's well into his 90s now. Great character. But, Bill, they've had 20 championships in IMSA competition since 96. It's pretty good going, isn't it?
Coming for the restart, Courtney Crone in the red 99, the Red Dragon, right on the rear wing of Dan Goldberg. And Goldberg has something he didn't have yesterday, and that is competition right there behind him. This yellow has stacked the field back up again, and he's going to have to put his head down and go. And you can go on a restart as soon as the green flag flies, and that's what we see. Cars spreading out. Lance Wilson going backwards, and he makes contact, or Mirko Schultes aboard the Mueller Motorsports entry. The blue and white, you saw him get together with Lance Wilsey and bodywork damage there on the front.
Yeah, that was unfortunate there for Mirko, the German driver, who's had success in prototype challenging process. Sebastian Carrazzo passing one of the LMP3 cars into the International Horseshoe. That's Scott Neal who's managing to go past. So he's using his experience from the past to to really make that car stand out in the early stages before the prototype drivers can get the proper heat into their tires.
Well, and you look at the experience that Carrazzo has versus the inexperience that Neil has behind the wheel of that prototype. Neil, not a lot of time behind the wheel of a prototype at all. He's trying to feel his way around, get temperature and pressure in those Michelin tires. And for Carrazzo, he was seeing if he could take advantage of it. And Neil with a problem.
Yeah, Scott Neil going backwards there at turn 6. So another car in the wall there. It's, you know, it certainly takes a couple of laps at speed to get the optimal pressures and temperatures into the tires. But meanwhile, Moise Uretsky has got a great run in the Aston Martin around the outside of Sebastian Carrazzo. They're going to be heading absolutely wheel to wheel towards the Le Mans chicane.
A test of wheels and braking down into the Le Mans chicane. Carrazzo maintains the lead, but Uretsky all over the rear wing of that Porsche, and Uretsky should have the run off of the Le Mans chicane as Carrazzo just a little bit loose in the middle of it. But what can you do with it? Do you have enough to clear him? I don't think so, and Uretsky's trying to figure out, do I drop behind the Porsche and use the draft, or is the Mustang going to go with me and help me go around the high side?
Yeah, that Porsche's pretty slippery in the straights. It's good. See there, it's got a much more smaller frontal area than the Aston Martin, and it's pretty fleet on the straights. He's able to maintain that advantage, but Billy Griffin is right there, and also behind Griffin is Todd Coleman as well in that green and black Aston Martin, and also Rob Walker, who's doing a super job in that Auto Technic BMW, the red, white and black car.
So Dan Goldberg out in front. We had some excitement on that restart. We talked about Schultes getting into Lance Wilsey. Look at Wilsey. He doesn't get a good start. He's about the 5th car back. The red, white, and blue entry in the middle of your picture. And Schultes, it looks like Schultes actually comes down on Wilsey. I thought maybe Lance had moved a little bit, but it looked to me like he moved down on the 30.
Yeah, just Lance Wilsey there was just completely caught out at the start. He was caught napping there. He just wasn't ready for the restart for whatever reason, and lost, well, 1 or 2 positions there. But it was a really good restart from Brian Thenis, who had a super run yesterday to finish in the 2nd position in that US Racetronics car number 77. But Dan Goldberg, he's taken advantage of that good start and good restart to leap away from Bijoy Garg at the front of the field. Bijoy managed to get past Courtney Crone on that first lap after the restart, and Brian Thenis now is trying to keep the pressure on young Courtney. Those two, they live only about 20 miles apart in Southern California. Courtney is from Corona, California, though she lives now in La Quinta, close to the Thermal Club. And Brian Thenis, well, he's a lifelong resident of the Huntington Beach area in Southern California.
You know, who else got a great restart? Patrick Wilmot. We talked about him a little bit earlier. The good run he had to a podium finish yesterday, kind of all for naught, because that part that was found on the car that did not match the homologation standards moved them to the back. He started in 10th, up to 6th right now, behind Rod Walker on board the number 25 BMW, and Wilmot having a good run towards the front. And right now, yesterday's winner, Billy Griffin, aboard the number 14 Mustang, has a rear view mirror full of bright green, and that is Todd Coleman. There's Wilmot in the silver and blue 88 BMW, all attached to this, and in reality, 1st through 7th right there together. Anybody slips up, you're going to gain a couple of positions if you're behind them, or if you made the mistake, you may lose 2 or 3.
That is really cool. Great battle there, and all sorts of different cars. There's 8 cars, I think, really in that train, because Vin Barletta is trying to hang on as best he can there in that number 96 Turner Motorsport BMW. And look at this train of cars. We've got a Porsche leading, Aston in 2nd place, a Ford, then another Aston, a couple of BMWs, and they're different shaped BMWs. One is a newer car of Rob Walker, Patrick Wilmot in that older car, car number 88, the older spec car, about a 5-year-old car, but he's doing a super job with that new team that is brand new to IMSA this weekend.
And you can certainly tell the new generation BMW, the G82, it's in the hands of Rob Walker aboard the 25, that big grill on it, a smaller grill on board the 88, but when you see the cars from the back, you can tell the difference between the G82 and the F82 because of the rear wing. The 25 in front, you see the rear wing supports come up and over and kind of grab the wing from the top. The older iteration M4 that the 88 is, that Patrick Wilmot is driving on, Coleman off in the grass.
And Walker.
Yeah, the supports on the older iteration come up from the bottom, and now Walker moved forward. What did I say about making a mistake? He got one position only to lose 3.
Yeah, exactly right. And you just carried a bit too much speed there going into the Le Mans chicane and across the grass on the first part, and he tried to make it up in the second bit, but it was on the grass again. That's going to cost him more time.
Just wasn't able to stay on the racetrack. Coleman was going to go with him, and then Coleman was like, well, if he's in the grass, I don't have anywhere to go.
Tremendous racing there, really good stuff. And Patrick Wilmot there, he says, thank you very much indeed. He moves up a couple of positions. But I think with that kind of loss of momentum there, he's lost a little bit of a draft maybe of the first 3 cars out in front. Sebastian Krause, Moise Uretsky and Billy Griffin pretty much tied together in the lead. And then just a little way back, that green the green and black Aston Martin in 4th position. That is Todd Coleman fighting to stay ahead of Patrick Wilmot. And then Tim Probert moving up again in the Murillo Racing Mercedes.
For Patrick Wilmot, he needs to just kind of latch onto the rear wing of Todd Coleman in that bright green Aston right now and say, hey, let's see if we can take this train forward to the group in front. You can see the gap as they head into turn 6. Top 3 just entering the corner, and then a gap of about 50 to 75 yards, let's say, back to Coleman, Wilmot, Probert, Walker. That group of 4, they need to close back down and then go racing again. But right now, that's the thing that's so difficult, Jeremy, isn't it? As a race car driver, hey, I need to be patient, but it's hard to be patient when you're inside 30 minutes to go.
Yeah, it is. It is. You want to get on with it. Some of these drivers have been used to longer races and others not. Here's a super battle here between Brian Thenis and Lance Wilsey, who's trying to make up for that poor restart in the white, red and blue car, as opposed to the red, blue and white car of Brian Thenis, who is currently in that 4th position, and both of them pretty close behind Courtney Crone as well in the Red Dragon car number 99.
Looking at the lead in the GSX categories as the number 27 of Sebastian Krause, the blue and orange Porsche, flashes across the line. And for Uretsky just behind in that blue and yellow and pink Aston Martin, the number 44. Uretsky going, what do I need to do? Where is that Porsche strong? Where is it weak? Both of those drivers have some pretty good experience, as does Billy Griffin behind him. Griffin, not a lot of IMSA experience, but a lot of experience aboard that GT4-based Mustang. So how am I going to find my way by? It is close racing out there everywhere. Look at this. Patrick Wilmot down the inside of Coleman slips through, but that was almost contact there at the apex, and Walker comes with him.
Yeah, good move there by Rob Walker, really was. He took advantage there of a slight slip from Todd Coleman's Aston Martin, and he moves it through at the apex into that 1 position gain then for the BMW of Rob Walker.
I think Patrick Wilmot said, hey, we're not getting where we need to go. I'm going to put you down behind me a little bit so I can charge to the front and try to get back to a podium finish. Right now, he's only got 1 spot left to go, but a good distance between himself and yesterday's race winner, Billy Griffin, aboard the number 14.
Yeah, not quite so easy today for Billy Griffin. He was able to move his way forward yesterday, but he was kind of helped, of course, with that incident between Sebastian Krause and Todd Coleman. Todd Coleman kind of slid back a little bit through the order after that. Krause had a problem, had to go to the pits after his spin, but now Billy Griffin, who is currently in the 3rd position from the pole position, he's got his work cut out right now because he knows both of those 2 cars ahead of him are fast.
It's interesting, the lap times so similar for the leaders, Jeremy, but they're making that lap time in different ways. The Porsche, as you said, seems to have good straight line speed. The Mustang also looks to have some good runs off of turn 6 and gain some ground as they head down towards the Le Mans chicane. But as the driver, you need to sit and analyze where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are, where can you attack, and where do you need to protect. For Billy Griffin, he doesn't really need to protect anything. He needs to find a way around the Aston Martin if he wants to battle for the lead.
Yeah, he does. And job 1 is to get past the Aston Martin. Job 2 then is to catch the race leader. And Sebastian Krause, he's got a lot of experience these days. He was very raw when he first started, of course, which he didn't unlike many kids today. He didn't start in karts as a very young driver. But he's gained a lot of experience in this sort of a car in various Porsches over the last few years, and he's using that experience now.
You talk about cars making their lap times in different ways. I was just watching Todd Coleman in that bright green Aston Martin, who runs now in the 6th position, this number 69 car, actually now in the 5th position. Car seems to be spectacularly strong on the brakes on the infield, stronger than Wilmot in the 88, and it's just interesting. Perhaps that Aston Martin getting the power down a little bit better coming out of turn 1. But think about the way this racetrack is, Jeremy. The finish line is way around. What you really want is a car that comes off of the Le Mans chicane on the last lap. If you lose a little bit on the infield, that's fine. The finish line is at the end of a very, very long top-end run.
It is, and you've got to plan ahead. You know, it's a sprint race, just 45 minutes, and we're almost halfway through it. But this is real chess game going on between these three. They are very different cars, but in overall lap times, they are very, very close. So it's up to the drivers there to optimize what they have. Look at them all three closing up as they head down towards the Le Mans chicane, and Sebastian, going towards the tri-oval. And there goes a Ford around the outside. Is he going to make that move, stick into turn 1? It's a tall order.
I think Billy Griffin kind of got caught out by the draft there. They got pulled up to the back of Carrazzo pretty quickly when he got to the rear wing of the Aston Martin. And it's almost like there was a moment of indecision for Billy Griffin of which way can I go, and he wasn't able to carry the momentum. But Uretsky now all over the back of Carrazzo in the 27. Aston Martin, again, seems to get off of turns 1 and 2 really well.
Yeah, those three are pretty close, but look behind him now. Patrick Wilmot.
He's there.
In that split decision racing BMW, he's closing in. These three are not pulling away from the 4th place car of Patrick Wilmot. Quite the contrary, Wilmot is closing on them, and Todd Coleman has got good pace as well in that Aston Martin car number 69. Meanwhile, up in the front in LMP3, lap times seem to be pretty close between the three leaders, but again, they're stretching out a bit. Dan Goldberg has set the fastest lap of the race.
All right, let's see what we can do with top speed this time. Out of turn 6 onto the super speedway. Aston Martin right here out of turn 2, speedway 2, seems to have some legs. So does the Mustang. I can't tell if it's pure horsepower or the draft coming into play, but he's drawn back into that battle as they get there to the braking zone. What can he do with it on the way off? And for Patrick Wilmot, he's now there. He's a part of this 4-car battle up front for the lead. Just under 23 minutes to go from Daytona.
Yeah, meanwhile, out in the front of the field, Dan Goldberg, he and Bejoy Garg were exchanging fastest laps. Let's have a look as they come through the Le Mans chicane. He runs over that curbing. Just, where is he?
Was that on the racetrack?
Was that debris from the racetrack, or was it from his car? Good question.
It looks like a dive plane. I'm wondering if it was not off of one of the GSX cars that we saw there a little bit earlier. We saw Coleman off, and there goes Rob Walker.
Scenic route.
Well, you know what? We saw Jim Farley use that yesterday to an advantage, right? I mean, going way wide and getting a good drive off the corner, using it to try to attack. Let's take a look at Dan Goldberg through the Le Mans chicane one more time, and I don't see it come off the front. It looks like maybe it's laying there on the curbing. Yeah. He comes by. I think it was.
Yeah, I do too.
I think it's a dive plane off of one of the GSX cars. Both of them still seem to be intact on the front of that Duquesne chassis as he comes through. And obviously a couple of cars were off there a little bit earlier, and Uretsky not letting Carrazzo get away. And for Billy Griffin, I was really impressed with his run yesterday, and I talked to him earlier this morning. He said, I just got to be smart, and if he can walk out of here with a win and a third, he'll have the championship lead. I know you want more than that, but as a race car driver, if you're thinking about championships and you're going to run the entire series, maximize points when you can. Now, Billy Griffin trying to maximize the strength of the Mustang around the high side. He's side by side with Uretsky, not able to hold on. And by making that move, he drops back to Patrick Wilmot. Now the question is, will Wilmot have the run off of the Le Mans chicane? We're going to have to keep an eye on this. And I'm going to think Billy Griffin's going to stay to the low side all the way around to the braking zone for turn 1.
Fascinating battle between these two cars. And both of these cars are coming towards the end of their kind of competition life, if you like. The Mustang has been around since, this is its 6th year. In fact, it was
2017.
It was due to lose its homologation at the end of last season. There was originally, the plan was to have a new generation GT4 Mustang ready for this year. That's been delayed somewhat, and the IMSA team the technical team has wisely decided to kind of give that car a bit of a break, to kind of grandfather it in to keep it eligible for this season. So it's one of the older cars here, but it's still very, very competitive, and Billy Griffin doing a nice job with it in that 3rd position. The BMW behind him, that's one of the old spec BMWs, the F82 M4 GT4, but Patrick Wilmot is doing a nice job with it. He had some problems in practice on Friday, which they eventually traced to a loose rear toe link on that car. And in qualifying yesterday, he really struggled. It was after qualifying they found the problem, and in the race yesterday he was fast. As Brian was talking about earlier on, they had a problem in post-race technical inspection where it was found that the cars with the springs with which this car had been delivered from its previous owner in Germany were not to the correct specification, and that was just an honest mistake by the team. They were told that the car came in absolutely standard specification, and it didn't, unfortunately. So they paid the price for that, but they accept that. It was their mistake for not checking it. Not they had much time because they only got the car a couple of weeks before, and there's Billy Griffin, a big slide into the Le Mans chicane. Whoa.
Wow, hats off to Uretsky for not making contact. It would have been Griffin's fault, but really heads-up move by Uretsky. Unfortunately, he's going to lose 2 positions with it. Look at Griffin, great car control to gather it up, but Uretsky realizes that if he turns down, there's going to be contact. He has to check up. Patrick Wilmot says, "Thank you very much, I'll take that."
Yeah, that was kind of funny, but you have to give Billy Griffin credit there. He realized he was going to cause a problem for Uretsky, so he did all he could to tighten up his line. And Uretsky, he hasn't raced with Billy Griffin before, so he didn't know how much he could kind of trust him, I don't think, did he? So he kind of didn't keep his foot buried, lost himself in momentum and a couple of positions.
Dan Goldberg just over a second lead over Joy Gard, who runs 2nd, but they're starting to work their way through the GSX field. You can see Gard there trying to work his way through those GSX cars coming out of turn 1, and now it's going to be about experience. Have you driven in multi-class racing before? How do you judge the speed, the different braking characteristics? And again, that's why I think this formula works so well, Jeremy. These drivers getting experience in this multi-class racing, and they get the entire race, the entire weekend in the seat. They're not sharing it with somebody else, and it's really helping develop these bronze and silver rated drivers.
That's right, and for Dan Goldberg in that race leading car number 73 for JDX Motorsports, he was a little bit more cautious through that traffic than Bijoy Garg, who's narrowed the gap. It won the previous lap, it was 2.6 seconds. It had kind of stabilized over the last half dozen laps, around 2.5 seconds between 1st and 2nd. Well, all of a sudden that gap has been halved. Just over a second there was between the 2 leaders as they came across start-finish line last time around, and ahead of them another string of GSX cars that they're going to have to negotiate. Is that going to give Bijoy Garg an opportunity to catch right up and maybe challenge Dan Goldberg?
The inaugural season of VP Racing Sports Car Challenge, race 2 underway, the doubleheader at Daytona International Speedway, the world center of racing. And right now, Dan Goldberg leading overall, but look at this battle for the lead in GSX. Race 1 winner Billy Griffin in his Mustang around the high side of Sebastian Carrazzo. Can he hold the position through 1 and 2 side by side? Griffin out wide. I think he's going to lose it. Carrazzo holds on, and Patrick Wilmot in 3rd in that silver and blue number 88 BMW. Can he take advantage? Problem for Frank Depew in his Camaro, the number 72. Right front tire looks to be down.
Ooh. Yeah, it does, doesn't it? That's a surprise for him. And he's going to have to bring that car in the pit lane. That's most unfortunate for Frank Depew. He's also running in the Michelin Pilot Challenge Series. They have their first race of the championship next weekend. But yeah, that was What's the surprise?
That can be dramatic on the banking here. Depew, a lot of experience, does a good job of keeping the car off the wall, gets it to pit lane, but you can tell how hard the wind is blowing, moving that debris down on the apron. And the overall lead, as they work through traffic, is beginning to close up. Garg, the second prototype in the shot, the black bodywork on the back of that number 3 because of a practice incident that Garg had where he did significant damage to the back end of his Ligier chassis from Junior 3 Racing. Team did a great job of getting it back together, but we saw traffic yesterday, Jeremy, slow these cars down, and Garg goes around. That's the same place that he had the problem that I was just talking about in practice. This one developed for a completely different reason. In practice, he got up on that apex curbing, the second right-hand apex curbing, and pitched the car up into the air around it when he made contact with the wall. This time, he's trying to work his way through the GSX traffic, gets out wide. And these LMP3-based cars do have traction control, Jeremy, but most of the drivers turn it way, way down, and I think that may have been what bit him at that point in time. And now the battle for second heating back up as Uretsky aboard the number 44, the Aston Martin, on a charge back to the front.
Yeah, we've got a 4-car battle now for the lead in GSX. That's a replay here of what happened there. But Joey Garg just got a little bit offline, trying to go around the outside of the GSX leader into the Le Mans chicane. Carried a little bit too much speed through there, and that was a great avoidance. Uh-oh, there's contact amongst the leaders.
Drama in the GSX category, running in the top 3. Patrick Wilmot had a good run going. Let's see what happens. Prototypes involved in Uretsky. Maybe he looked in the mirror to see what Courtney Crone was doing, but Uretsky hard into the back of Wilmot and turns him. Yeah,
unfortunately so. And Patrick Wilmot there was just, he was doing everything right. He certainly did nothing wrong, and he got a punt there from the rear. It was awfully tight, and there's damage then to the right rear corner on that number 88 split decision Motorsports BMW, and that's going to be the end of that car's day.
Yeah, and hopefully Patrick will, cooler heads will prevail. I know he's not happy inside the car right now. He's got a place to pull that car off and not affect everybody else's race. Hopefully he'll get that done, but that is heartbreaking for that split decision team.
Yeah, it really is. And the battle that they were involved in there with the P3 cars was that with the spin for Garg, that was a battle for second position. Courtney Crone just ahead of Brian Thienes and Lance Willsey. So that's a battle that's continuing as well.
And looking at Todd Coleman in his Aston Martin, the under tray, the rear diffuser loose on that car, flapping up and down, and we saw that car off the racetrack there at the Le Mans chicane early in the race, and perhaps that is an indication of just how rough a ride it was. That rear diffuser beginning to now vibrate heavily, and it'll be interesting to see if they can keep it on and not scatter debris on the racetrack. Under 13 minutes to go, but still a long time. And for Dan Goldberg, the last thing he wants to see right now is a full course caution. Brian Thienes now up to second because of the problems that Garg had there in the Le Mans chicane, and it's a healthy lead for Goldberg, and that's why I said he wants to make sure that we don't get debris and they have to go full course caution. Look at this battle in GSX. Good stuff. Mustang versus BMW versus Aston Martin, and it's not just any Mustang driving the number 98 for Multimatic. That's Jim Farley, the CEO of Ford Motor Company.
Yeah, that's right. What an enthusiast he is, and he's involved in a great battle here. He's had some ABS problems during practice on the first day, but he made up good speed yesterday. Thought he had an incident on the last lap, which cost him a whole bunch of positions yesterday, but he's made up good ground again today. He's an avid vintage racer, has some really cool cars in his collection, including a Ford GT40, a Mustang, a Shelby Cobra, and another car as well, including a 2-liter Le Mans Lola. But this is his first ever professional weekend of racing.
And what the team needs to let Farley know right now is that the car behind him doesn't matter anymore. The car behind him, the 44 of Uretsky, incident responsibility with the 88. There'll be a drive-through penalty there, so don't get your eyes focused on the rearview mirror. Keep them focused forward. Farley did a great job yesterday. I was talking to his team and Scott Maxwell this morning, and Scott said, I'm really proud of him. He did a great job. Needs to learn how to use prototype traffic a little bit more, but he kept his nose clean, did everything that we asked, learned a lot. The vintage experience that he has, Jeremy, doesn't come with a lot of wheel-to-wheel racing. You pass a lot of cars because the cars are so different in the speed that they have, but this wheel-to-wheel racing is completely new to him.
Yeah, it is, and that's something he's got to learn about, and he's learning pretty quickly too.
Doing a great job.
Good race here, making up quite a bit of ground. He started way back in 20th position overall, up now into the 15th place, and he's passed 4 or 5 cars in the GSX category this afternoon.
Uretsky serves the drive-through penalty for the contact and a problem for the 18. Again, working your way through traffic, and this is where these drivers, Mirko Schultes with the problem in the 18, trying to work his way through GSX cars, and these drivers learning how to deal with each other. Take a look at Schultes. He thinks he's going to go around the high side, gets up in the gray, and then just drops a wheel off in the grass. And you got to think about the damage that he has with all that bodywork missing off the left front.
Yeah.
It's a significant loss of downforce on the front end of the number 18.
Yeah, it is. He had that problem early on in the race with the contact at the restart. So that the front end on that car just doesn't have the grip that it had before the incident. And he just tried to make a bold move around the outside. Didn't pay off for Mirko Schultes. So he's having a difficult day at the wheel of that Mueller Motorsports car number 18.
So Jim Farley now with the prototype behind him. He's trying to do battle with the 19 of Sean Quinlan just in front. And one of the things that Scott and I were talking about this morning was how to use prototype traffic to your advantage. I don't think he's going to be able to use it here because that prototype will streak by and be gone and out of the picture by the time they get to turn 1. But that's what these drivers need to learn, right, Jeremy, is how to use those faster cars as a pick. It's not just about how to pass someone, it's also about how to be passed, lose as little time possible, and take advantage of it. Courtney Crone, good run in 3rd position right now. And Courtney, beneficiary of the IMSA Diverse Driver Development Program Scholarship this year. Bob Stallings, see the Gainsco livery and the 99, the red colors. He's a big believer in Courtney. She's driven just about everything, Jeremy, including LMP3 cars and IMSA Prototype Challenge over the years. This is going to be a great learning tool for her. It's all about her this year in that car single driver format. She'll get more time and more development work than she's probably had in her career. A focus on 1 series, 12 races, single driver.
Yeah, great opportunity for her as well, particularly to have somebody like Bob Stallings behind her. And Todd Malloy has been a big help to her in her early career as well. She cut her teeth on short track racing on the West Coast, had some success there in a whole bunch of different cars. So as you say, she's driven just about everything over the years. But she's now trying to close it. She was caught up in that incident. It wasn't of her making. Able now to come back, and she's going to try and track down Brian Thenis, who is in 2nd position, doing a nice consistent job for US Racetronics. And Courtney is going to try and close that gap.
And as a young driver, scholarships like that are a huge boost. They come with tremendous opportunity. How much pressure do they come with, Jeremy?
Yeah, a lot, because as you say now, the onus is on her. This battle for the lead now, side by side, are the 2 leaders. The Mustang has the straight line speed there to get around the outside of the Porsche as they head toward and through the tri-oval, but the Porsche is much more nimble in the corners. Carrazza will close up under braking, but it looks this time that Billy Griffin was able to pull up enough of a lead to be able to maintain it this time.
We talk about how the lap time is made. The Mustang, to me, seems to have more in the last half of the straightaway. Porsche seems to come off the corners a little bit better, maybe good momentum because of a well-balanced car off of the Le Mans chicane. But you know, Carrazzo's sitting there right now behind the wheel going, the Mustang's too fast, the Mustang's too fast.
Yeah, you're right. No, it's kind of horses for courses, and that's what I like about this series. The cars are different, and they do make their speed, their lap times in very different ways. But that makes it so much of a challenge for the drivers. And some racetracks will suit some cars better than others, and that's a fact of life. The Ford is good here right now. But we go to some of the other races later in the season. It might not be quite so beneficial to have one of these Ford Mustang GT4s.
Well, you're a big part of Team USA scholarship. When you talk to young drivers, it's really hard to get past wanting race wins. And you talk to young drivers and you go, which is more important, race wins or championships? And they'll go, well, championships. But they're willing to risk everything for a race win. And it's like, because it takes the combination of the two, doesn't it?
Yeah, you've got to put a whole season together to win a championship. And winning one race is great, but winning a championship is even better because you've done that over the course of a full season. And for someone like Courtney, as you say, driving on her own this season, she's been driving over the last couple of seasons with a co-driver in the Prototype Challenge Series. Now she's on her own and she's got her head down. She's going to close on the veteran here, Brian Thenis, who's been around this sport a long time. He'd raced Atlantic cars back in the day, former Atlantic cars, and Pro Mazdas, well, now Pro Mazdas, Star Mazdas back then. So massive amount of experience, huge enthusiast, loves his racing. He's a civil engineer by trade, he's even though he's now approaching. Actually, next week he'll celebrate his 60th birthday, will Brian, but he drives like a teenager, and he wants to keep that youngster Courtney Crone, who's just 21 years of age, behind him.
Tim Probert aboard the Murillo Racing number 65 Mercedes AMG, door to door with the BMW of Rob Walker as they race towards the kink. And Probert made that mistake yesterday on the start, got out of line and had to do the drive-through penalty. That was not going to happen today, and he's been heady. There have been some problems around, but he has moved forward. He was actually the quickest car in the first two practice sessions, and he was saying, I'm loving it here. Had the problem, like we said, on the start, but now a good run here, trying to get past Walker into that final spot on the podium. Mercedes versus BMW.
Yeah, really cool, isn't it? It's super to see these different marks battling out. There is a manufacturer championship in the GS category as well. With all these different cars out there, the Ford, the Aston Martin, the Porsche, Mercedes, BMW, and Chevrolet, it's going to be quite a contest to keep an eye on as the season progresses.
And now some Ford versus BMW. Talk about the different manufacturers. Farley with a good run, gets past Quinlan, coming on to the super speedway. And this will be a good measure of BMW top speed versus Ford. Quinlan to the high side, jumps back down to the inside, trying to take the preferred line into the brake zone. Farley with a good job, not feeling pressured at all, focuses forward, does his job, gets through there, good run out. Will separate him a little bit from Quinlan. And now he can focus forward to see if he can chase down Seldorf in front of him in another BMW. Great run, heady move by Farley there. He is learning this racecraft, and we talked about it. This wheel-to-wheel racing, driving a car is one thing, but when you put more out there in your class that are running your speed, it becomes a racecraft deal, and that's what Jim Farley's learning. He's learning it well. He is learning it well, and he's got some good people to fall back on in that team, that Multimatic Motorsports team, which is the Ford development team. Scott Maxwell is the driver coach there, and he develops these cars on track before they are raced. So he's got one of the best in the business. Scott Maxwell had a huge amount of success also in many different cars. He's raced in the Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona. In fact, 25 years ago, I did their scoring for him for Scott Maxwell when he was driving by hand. A Ferrari by hand, yeah, driving a Ferrari with Larry Holt, who is now the boss of Multimatic, on the stand as well. Larry, not only one of the most brilliant people in the paddock, I think, as far as racing goes, he's also one of the funniest. I had a great conversation with him this morning as Rob Walker still has his rearview mirror full of Tim Probert. Sometimes it's the side view mirror because Probert's taking a look here and there. 2 laps to go and just under 2 minutes to go from round 2 of VP Racing Sports Car Challenge, the inaugural weekend for this brand new series in IMSA competition. seeing great racing throughout. Courtney Crone trying to catch Brian Thenis for the second position in the LMP3 category, but she's caught some traffic here and there, and we saw it yesterday, Jeremy. That traffic, it can affect your lap time by 3 or 4 seconds.
Yeah, and her best lap for Courtney Crone is it's about a half a second quicker than Brian Thenis, but Brian is using his experience there. He's super consistent, and he's actually stretched that gap out a little bit over the course of the last couple of laps.
Walker able to pull out a little bit in his number 25 BMW over Tim Probert in the Mercedes just behind him. Probert with a very different line into turn 1, Walker down low in that Autotechnic BMW, the G82. We talked about the new iteration of the BMW. It runs a slightly larger front tire, a taller sidewall, and they say it's just a little bit more subtle over the bumps than the F82 with a shorter sidewall. And for Dan Goldberg, looking to make it 2 in a row, he'll come across the line to the white flag. One more lap here at the World Center of Racing, and Dan Goldberg will leave with a perfect weekend if he can stay up front.
Yeah, if you just keep it clean now. He's been really, he's coached over the radio here by his race engineer, who's been around this sport a long time, and is hugely experienced, John Walko. And he's also looking after the JDC car, by the way, in the Rolex 24 next weekend. So he's a busy guy this weekend, but he loves working with any driver who takes it seriously. Dan Goldberg, look, he's not a professional driver, wouldn't profess to be, so he's a builder by trade, and a very successful one at that. But he's a useful race car driver as well, and he loves the professionalism that this JDC Motorsports team has. It's a very small team. It's just John Walko and 2 very experienced mechanics in Jim Steppen and Will Paul, but they put together a really nice car, and Dan Goldberg is just relishing their professionalism. He loves the fact that this chicane seems to suit him a little bit better than the Ligier he's driven for the last couple of years, and he's taking full advantage of it.
Well, it's interesting. We've talked to different drivers over the last several years, and it seems like it takes a certain driver, as you say, horses for courses, a certain driver to enjoy this Duquesne chassis like Dan Goldberg is. It fits him well, even though it's a smaller cockpit, a little tighter confines inside of it. And he just had a big smile on his face yesterday, talking about the nuances of this car, and like you said, it just seems to fit him well. This series seems to fit the competitors well. IMSA has come up with a formula that is working, and right now this Duquesne working for Dan Goldberg coming into the 2023 season with high hopes. He'll leave Daytona 2 for 2, 2 wins in 2 races in VP Racing Sports Car Challenge. Another great run for Goldberg here at Daytona, and a very heady run for Billy Griffin aboard the number 14 Ford Mustang. We saw him lose a couple of positions at the start yesterday, came back to win, had a hard-fought run today, and still continuing to fight, looking for his win. He's got a little farther to go. And this fight between Farley and Seldorf not going anyway. They still have a long way to go. This is for 6th and 7th.
Yeah, and that really is a good battle, isn't it, between...
We saw this same battle yesterday.
Yeah, we did. And yesterday, what we didn't see was the final lap at this particular corner. Jim Farley had a spin. I think there was some P3 traffic in there as well, and it cost him a lot of positions. But meanwhile, out in front in this car, the similar Ford Mustang GT4 run by the Core Motorsports organization, that race for RP entry of Billy Griffin from West Palm Beach, Florida, heading toward the checkered flag.
Through Speedway 3 and 4 into the tri-oval, Billy Griffin looking for the checkered flag. It will be 2 in a row. What a great way to start the season. Mustang, Billy Griffin, Core, race for RP, take the checkered flag in GSX at Daytona. Good stuff, and the battle's still on. This is for 3rd. Tim Probert not letting Walker get away, just not enough at the end. Where is Farley? That battle he's having with Seldorf, Ford versus BMW for 6th and 7th. It looks like the BMW a better run off of the Le Mans chicane that time. Seldorf will take 6th, but man, it wasn't an easy one by any stretch of the imagination. And I know that for Seldorf, he was probably saying, This is exactly what I saw yesterday. A big white Mustang in my rearview mirror does a great job to hold him off. Jim Farley learning his craft. And again, this is what the series is all about. It's what it's supposed to be about, and that is great racing, sprint racing. And we saw it throughout the classes today. Dan Goldberg, another checkered flag and another victory in VP Racing Sports Car Challenge.
So with the double wins, obviously, for Dan Goldberg and Billy Griffin, tremendous weekend for both of those two. Unofficially, they will have pretty substantial leads in each of their categories. In P3, unofficially, with 2 races in the books, Dan Goldberg would have a perfect 700 points to get 350 for a win. Brian Thenis, another second position today to add to his second place yesterday. He will be on 640 points. Third position will be Bijoy Garg, despite his various dramas through the weekend, on 560, and then behind him Courtney Crone on 530, Lance Wilsey on 520, so very tight there. In GSX, Billy Griffin with a perfect weekend, 700 points, well clear now of Rob Walker. Had a really good third position today to add to his third yesterday, so 2 podium finishes for Rob Walker from San Diego, California. He'll have 600 points, and behind him on 540 will be Todd Coleman in an Aston Martin, who finished 5th today.
And Goldberg celebrating in victory lane here at Daytona again. But you look through LMP3, Goldberg, Brian Thenis, then Courtney Crone, great run to third. What impressed you about LMP3 in addition to the 3 on the podium? Yeah, no, it's just a perfect performance here by Dan Goldberg. He set himself a nice pace out front. He took advantage of the various dramas that were going on behind him and just drove a perfect race. Well coached, perfectly executed for Dan Goldberg. Courtney Crone, she'll be disappointed not to have caught Brian Thenis at the end there, but Brian will be absolutely thrilled with that second place finish. He loves this sport. He was thinking, he's been thinking for a few years, why do I do this? But on Friday, he gets here, he sees the crew, how hard the crew is working on his US Racetronics car. He gets behind the wheel. Oh yeah, this is why I do it. It is fun. And when you come away with a second place finish as well, there is the icing on the cake. Billy Griffin takes the win. We talk about the GSX category. You look, Ford, Porsche, BMW, Mercedes, Aston Martin, 5 manufacturers in the top 5. The formula works, and some impressive runs throughout. We talked about Patrick Wilmot early on, not the finish that they wanted after the contact, but they showed what they are made of, as did all of these drivers. Experienced drivers, inexperienced drivers, they put it all on the line here at Daytona, and that is the great thing about this new formula that is VP Racing Sports Car Challenge. Make sure you catch all of the races, just like our safety worker caught that mirror. Impressive stuff there, and great racing around the World Center of Racing here for this series and these drivers. 6 weekends throughout the seasons, 2 races each, and that will bring you more and more excitement for the remainder of the season. Make sure you catch all of the races here in VP Racing Sports Car Challenge. For Jeremy Shaw, I'm Brian Till. We'll see you next time.